Season 1, Episode 4 of one of my favorite shows ever, The Sopranos. So, when this dream opens up, we're opening up into Tony's dream. And in his dream, he's in a session with Dr. Melfi. And so, while they're conversing, Hesh glides by the window. And so he says to Dr. Melfi, I just saw someone I know. And she says, who? Heshi? Yeah, he has a 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Anyway, she was saying he had an appointment. And so he gets up to leave because he's paranoid. He can't sleep because he stole a key. Shout out to Master P. I always feel like somebody's watching me. Anyway, so he opens the door and he sees his son peeking out of another door at him. And then his eyes roams the room. First he sees Silvio. He's being pleasured by a stripper from the club, it appears. He keeps looking around and his eyes land on Polly, who is looking at him like he is angry. He continues to look around the room and he sees Pussy Papancero reading a newspaper. Pussy looks towards Polly, then look back towards his newspaper as if he didn't care what was going on. So he goes back towards Dr. Melfi and he asks her what's going on. And then in the corner, Jackie pops up and he's laying on a gurney with medical equipment around him and hooked up to him. And he gets up smoking a cigarette and he says, rain is coming, or he might have said a storm is coming. And so he then looks back to Dr. Melfi and he's like, what are you doing to me? And then the chair spins around and it's his mama with a wig on that resembles Dr. Melfi's hair. Now, a lot was going on in this dream. Tony was smart and he had done a lot of horrible things in his life. And he really didn't have any morals. Well, he held on to those that he had about family and, the other male chauvinistic things that worked in his favor. But he had seen enough to know that all the bad things that he had done had necessarily came back to him because he felt like those people deserved it. I don't think that Tony would have put it that way verbatim, but he definitely had a lot of knowledge from his life, and enough to where he was able to get a vivid dream like this, because your dreams are based upon the knowledge that you have. It speaks to you based upon what you know and what you've learned. So him being in therapy also opened him up to have vivid dreams, and ultimately he would learn how to use them in his favor. And there'll be episodes where I'll be able to explain how he did so. Also, him being on Prozacs definitely helped him to be sleep, in a deep sleep enough for him to be able to have the clear dreams as well. So, that dream really did unfold things that would happen. I can't remember if it was this episode, but definitely this season. Okay. So Tony wakes up and he's at his Russian mistress house. And if Carmela wasn't such a bird, I would probably have a spiel for how, he's horrible for doing her like that. But I watched the All Saints of Newark. I might be saying that wrong, but either way, I saw the movie. She knew what was going on. She knew she was getting into. Okay, so he gets home and Anthony Jr. was playing a video game, the Nintendo 64. And he lies to him about where he is, but Anthony's thoughts about where he is, or him feeling like his dad is lying about where he is, has nothing to do with him being with another woman, and everything to do with the fact that he has just found out that his dad has mob ties. So he's more so concerned, he's more so thinking he's lying to him about him being out committing crime than him being with another woman. So in the next scene, Christopher is getting out of the hospital and he is terrified because he thinks that Tony might have sent the Frenchman after him because he sold metal drugs. Now his girlfriend Adriana, who's picking him up, she's making fun of him because he's paranoid. But ultimately, he has a right to be paranoid because it could be Tony, but it could also be somebody else. He don't really know who it is, and he's a mobster, so it could be anybody. So he is antsy, and he tells her, "Hey, let's stop by Braden's house so we can score some drugs, so I can feel a little bit better. I need to chill out. I need to chill my nerves." That's what Christopher was on. So they get to Braden's house and they get to his door, and it was unlocked. It might even been a drawer, but a jar. Did I say that right? Y'all know what I mean. Anyway, so he sees that the door is open, and he thought it was strange, but he went on in because this is homeboy. So he goes in, and Adriana has to pee, so she scurries out to the bathroom. He goes in the refrigerator, and he's talking to Braden, and then Adriana screams. Christopher runs towards her, towards the bathroom, and he sees Braden in the tub with a gunshot straight through the eye. And this is a reference to Mo Green's hit in The Godfather. In the next scene, Anthony Jr. is at school and he's prank calling a classmate by sending messages to his beeper. In the 90s, we would use how the numbers could be shaped like letters upside down to send messages to people. One of the famous ones was to use 4 that looked like an H and 0 and 3 that looked like an E. So I'd imagine it was something along that lines that he sent. And so he's doing it on the pay school. I'm sorry, he's doing it on the pay phone at school in front of the dude. So dude knows him, and so he confronts Anthony Jr. about it, and then they end up having a shoving about like a little fight. A school faculty member breaks up the fight, and during the fight, Anthony Jr.'s shirt is torn. That would be an issue further in the episode. In the next scene, Tony is on his way to another session with Dr. Melfi. Well, while on his way to his office, or to her office, he sees Silvio leaving from an office himself, and Tony ran into some other guy's office, and it looked like it was a medical center, so definitely another type of doctor. And he's asking him, "Yo, can I help you? Can you just barge up in my room, bro? What's going on with you?" And so when he saw that Silvio was gone, he came out and went to the door that Silvio came from out of. And Silvio was there because he obviously had a dentist appointment because the door, stated that it was a dentist's office. So now Tony is paranoid because he's worried about them finding out him seeing a psychiatrist being an issue. They may think that he's telling them things about the mob, etc. So when he's in his session with Dr. Melfi, he tells her that he doesn't think that he can keep coming to see her. And he tells her that no. So she tells him that I can't really I can't tell people what we talk about. And he's not really telling her stuff that the mob would be concerned with. But he still was paranoid. Like if they were to find her and talk to her about the things that he talked to her about, you know. But lack of education. Anyway, in the next scene, Christopher and Adriana pull up at Meadow's school because now he feels like Tony might have killed Braden because Tony didn't really care for him. And so, as they're moving her to the car, Hunter is asking about Braden because she had a crush on him or whatever. Um, this is after Christopher pops up from the back seat, you know, all frantic. They pull off from Hunter, who doesn't care anything about Christopher popping up all frantic. She just want to know what's going on with Braden. And he pretty much is screaming at her, like, feeling like she told her daddy and that he probably would be murdered because she couldn't keep her mouth shut. And so she tells him, like, bro, I don't know what you talking about. I ain't told my daddy then. He been around here worried about you and worried about where you at, you know? And Christopher was just going out of his mind. Like, he was like trying to apologize by taking that girl to McDonald's and you just picked her up from high school. And Adriana asked him, like, where the F are you, dude? Because you're really tripping. But like I said, like, he had a reason to feel like he did. One, he's a mobster. Two, he didn't know if it was Tony. But even now that he didn't know it was Tony, it was somebody. It was somebody, and it definitely had to do with the way he lived his life. Okay. In the next scene, Anthony Jr. is trying to kill something on his wall, a fly or something, and Carmilla walks in and shows him the shirt that is torn, and she inquires about why it was torn. So Anthony Jr. tells her that he got into a fight with another classmate. And this is a classmate that Carmilla knows because they have gone to camp together. They've been at each other's house, you know. And so she basically tells him that he's responsible for the shirt. And, you know, before she asked him like, "You getting into it with him? I thought y'all were friends." But anyway, so he tells her that he's going to get the money. Now she didn't tell him to go to that young man to get the money. She was basically telling him like, "You gonna have to do it through allowance, etc." Right? We'll come back to that in the rest of the episode. So Tony goes to visit his mother, and she is a miserable energy. And Tony should have also been talking about his daddy because ultimately he got his ways from his daddy, but his mother was a very very miserable person. And for me, watching the seasons that the character was there, the first and second season, and then also seeing the movie that David Chase brought out not too long ago as an extension of The Sopranos to show how Tony ultimately got into the life, she should have been a mobster, straight up. But anyway, he take her some desserts, and I'm sure that they're desserts that he knows that she likes because that's her mama. I know the type of desserts my mama like. You know what I'm saying? I know what to go get my mama. I know what to go get her that she like. You know, if you got a good relationship with your mama, you know what she like. And so he takes him to her to give her some happiness. And then for a second, she showed she was happy because I forgot what they were called. But anyway, it's definitely something that she liked. And then all of a sudden, she just turned mean. Like she didn't want him. You know, she was just acting like she didn't want him. She's like, oh, they're too sweet. Just find a way to complain. And this, of course, agitated Anthony. But he has this thing in his head that he has to be a good son. But this is something that a lot of us do with our parents. A lot of us feel like we have to have relationships with our parents and they make us feel bad. And you do not. It don't matter who it is. Anybody who just continuously has consistent toxic energy and they show that they don't want to change. I don't care how much you love them. You have to think about yourself and remove yourself from them. You have to, especially when they're in this age frame and they still don't change. And it's like you get into a point in your life where most people need somebody to help them, and you're continuing to be mean because you feel like you are deserved for somebody to give their time to you to help you, and they are not. Nobody has to do anything. And with the age that we come into, with a lot of these young people leaving religion, a lot of elders need to get their mind right. They really do. Because these children are learning that they don't have to hold on to relationships that they don't want to hold on to. So, if you're going to be mean and evil, you need to make sure you're rich, mean, and evil so that you can pay somebody to take care of you. Okay, so he was trying to make the visit a pleasant one. And he tells her that the head of the nursing department told him about a trip that they were going to have for the seniors. They was going to go to the city to see a show. But because this woman loves to live in her misery and she's mad that she's in a nursing home, she says that she doesn't want to go. And then starts going on a tangent about all kinds of things and mentioning something that she always mentioned, and that is a woman throwing her kids off of a balcony, off a building or some sort. And because she said it so many times, and Dr. Melfi does address it eventually, but because she mentioned it so many times, you could tell that she was a woman who didn't want to have kids. She just had kids because that's what came with being a mob wife. I There's a lot of similarities between Carmilla and his mama. It's just that Carmilla's a bit more docile and his mother isn't. But both of them wanted to be in that life. The difference is this generation, and Carmilla started seeing that she needed to have her own separate person, or at least that's how she felt. But the mom, she knew what she was getting into. That's the life that she wanted. but unfortunately, she had to have children to be in it so that he'd have some type of loyalty to her. Tony tells her that she's not making the best of the opportunities of her being in the retirement home. Um, but she doesn't want to see the opportunities. She just wants to be mad. She says to him that he doesn't really care if she's enjoying herself there or not because she's out of sight and out of mind. And that's why he put her there so that he didn't have to watch her be miserable all alone in her home. Not because he's trying to give her a life to live in her glory days. Her character is very miserable. And he is trying to reassure her that he doesn't feel that way, and neither does his wife nor his children. And then to make him feel worse, she says that she wished that her own God would take her now. She's saying that she doesn't want to be on earth anymore. And I don't believe that she actually believes in any of that religion mumbo jumbo because of how she is as well. But people do like to use religion as the way to guilt people into doing things for them or to, allow them to abuse them. They'll use that. He told her that he came there to cheer himself up, and he was asking himself if it was a bad idea. And she says that he's being sarcastic because she doesn't feel like he come to see her to lift his spirits. And even if she was happy to see him, she wouldn't allow herself to let him know that she was happy that he was coming up there because she just wanted to put a whole bunch of guilt. She just she just wanted him to feel guilty about putting her there. Um, he told her that she could be. He told her like, I'm spending a lot of money on this mama, and you could be happy if you wanted to. But you're just sitting in here pissing it down the drain. And then she guilts him again by saying that he's using horrible language talking to her. So he's about to go and he asks her again if she wanted the dessert that he brought for her. And she waved her hand as to say that she didn't want them. So Tony, who has now reached his limit, he gets up to leave. But as he's walking away, she says to him, "Leave some for the idiots or the lunatics or something like that." Speaking of the other people that was in the nursing home. So Tony puts the desserts on the plate on the table, but he does so in an uncouth way, and she looks at him with disgust. He then kisses her and walks away. Now, Tony was not going to just get to lift his spirits with his mama. He was going to meet up with his informant cop. And as he's walking to his car, he sees said informant cop peeing in the bushes. He picks up enough to hit him to get his attention and tells him how disgusting it is for him to be peeing in the bushes so close to the parking lot that the patients and other people could see him doing so. And I thought so too. Like, bro, that's nasty. Why is you doing that? So the informant cop, whose name I don't remember at the moment, maybe I'll find out, but his character only is so important for a couple of episodes, so maybe I won't. But and if you watch the show, you'll know who I'm talking about. But he was telling him that it was kind of inconvenient for them to meet there anyway. And then Tony reminds him that, basically, I'm a mobster, bro. You're a police officer. We cannot be seen together, you know. Like, we can't be. You want them to get some pictures of us at the police station? So, he was basically like, we have a relationship of you giving me information. Like, I know you don't want to get caught out here doing that. You know, you a whole detective. So anyway, I felt like it was smart for them to meet at the mother's nursing home. Okay. So he was meeting up with him so that he could get information about Dr. Melfi. Because he had an issue with with not knowing who she was, and he's given her his most inner thoughts that he wouldn't talk to other people about, not even his wife. So Tony doesn't let him know it's his therapist. He doesn't really let him know the relationship that he has with Dr. Melfi. And Tony basically tells him to mind his effing business. And, you know, they always have a little back and forth, him and this informant cop. And then, you know, basically the informant cop is going to do what he wants. And then he offers him some of the dessert treats that he took to his mother. And the cop says very easily, without all the extraness that his mother, Liv, gave him. And, you know, that just showed how miserable she was, because even with this informant cop, with whom Tony and him would have a little banter going back and forth, but you could tell that they respected each other, he still was able to take the sweet treat without being miserable about it. Okay. So the next scene, Tony and Polly and Pussy Papacero and Silvio. I don't have to keep saying Papacero. It's only one pussy now. Okay, so they're all in the hospital with Jackie, and Jackie isn't really responding anymore. He's out of it. And Tony questions what kind of God would allow this to happen. And this also lets me know that Tony definitely had questions about a God outside of himself. And that's how a lot of people will walk away from religion. But I always try to tell people that that's not a good time too, when you're mad about something, about losing something or something of that sort, because leaving from that way can cause you to go back. Like, if you're gonna leave religion, is I feel everybody's different, but I just feel like it'd be best if you left in a healthy way, not because of church hurt, not, you know, not because something majorly bad happened in your life and it caused you to question it. It definitely needs to be, I've been going to church, I question a lot of things, I'm going to research those things, and then you come to that conclusion. That's a healthy way to do so, but everybody's different, you know? Okay. So Tony walks in with a neck brace on, you know, because he's gotten out of the hospital. And Tony gets up and asks him where he's been. And Christopher tells him that Braden is dead. And Tony inquires about what he's talking about. And right after that, Jackie is sleep talking. You know, you can tell Jackie is probably on his way out of here. So Christopher tells him that Braden was shot through the eye, and him saying that, you know, Pussy says, he mentions how it was similar to Mo Green's murder in The Godfather. And Tony instantly knows that it's Uncle Junior who did the job. So Christopher is enraged, and now he wants to go get some get back for his homeboy. I mean, naturally, you know, I'm a mobster. I'm finna come look for you. But Tony stops him from doing anything because he knows the kind of trouble that can come with that afterwards, and he understood that some thought needs to be put into the next move. And you know, they have a little back and forth about it outside of the hospital room, and he eventually tells him, "You're not going to do anything," and then he tells Polly that if he tries to move, break his other neck. But Tony is obviously upset about what happened, because although he didn't like Braden, he didn't feel like he needed to be killed. So he's waiting for the elevator to come, and there is construction going on beside him, and he notices a stapler there, a big one, and he picks it up. So he goes up to the store or restaurant. I'm not sure what that building was that Uncle John Junior is at. In the in the scene where he said um, he was like, I'm not. I came in heavy, but I don't want to use it. That setting. And he gets out of the car and he sees Mikey. So he goes into the front of Mikey's car and he sees that he has a ticket. Mikey doesn't care. And so, for whatever reason, Mikey gets out of the car, but before he can even get up on his feet good, Tony just whop, 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 whop. He whopped him. And once he's on the ground and he punches him a couple of times, he takes the stapler out and he staples him with it. This is one of my favorite scenes because I do not like Mikey. So after he gets through giving him the ass whooping that he absolutely deserved, he walks towards the store. He wipes his fingerprints from off the staple and throws it down on the ground. And so he goes up to him and he's basically telling him that he is going about things the wrong way. Tony goes in mad. He just goes in like and interrupt him talking. Uncle Junior was making a joke or whatever, but he basically tells him like you going about this the wrong way. And as they're talking, it Uncle Junior says something to him about how he has his mother in a home where she lives poorly, like finding a way to get under Tony's skin and to make him look bad in front of the other men that were in there. And Tony then, they have a back and forth or whatever. Tony responds to him saying that, like, you don't know what you're talking about, bro. And then Uncle Junior gets like he get a little cocky and he like asking him if Christopher earned good for him. And Tony was like, yeah, he do all right. And then he was like, well, maybe he need to work for me since you don't know how to handle him. And Tony absolutely didn't agree with him. He's not going to give Christopher to him. That's not going to happen. And so Tony is like, well, Uncle Junior is like, I'm trying to make things right with you, and you slapping my hand away. And Tony is asking him why they aren't able to like come to a common ground. Now I mentioned something soon, but I'm not gonna go back and correct anything. I'm just gonna correct it right here. I said something about him going into the shop where he or the shot where he told him if you come in heavy, you should come in heavy, and if you don't come at all. That hasn't happened yet. But I'm sure that I mentioned him talking to him in this place before. Nonetheless, he tells him now that the next time he comes, he needs to come in heavy or not at all. And he leaves. That's why I was pausing a bit because I was reading my notes and I was trying to see if that season had happened yet or how he actually barged into the place where Uncle Junior be chilling at. It's a restaurant or a store. I don't know what it is. It might be a little bit of both. But so yeah. So after he whooped Mikey behind, which was needed, he went into said place. He went in storming, interrupting Junior talking, telling him that he was handling it the wrong way. Junior then comes back with saying to him that the way that his mother lived in the nursing home, it was like it was awful. Like he just put her in some dirty, nasty nursing home. And there's a theme throughout the seasons that suggests that the nursing home was expensive, so that wasn't a fact. And then they have more back and forth, and then he talks about Christopher asking how he earns and saying that he should come work for him. And then he tells him the next time you come in here, you come in here heavy or you don't come at all. So I hope that was more of an explanation because, like I said, I'm not finna do this all. Okay, so in the next scene, informant cop is behind Dr. Milfy and her date. and her date are having a good small talk in the car. So they don't notice the informant cop with his partner behind him. Um, the informant cop buddy wants to know why they're behind the cop, but he is just ignoring him and telling him not to worry about it. Like they're just doing a little thing, something that's absolutely illegal. So ultimately, he turns on the siren so that Dr. Melfi and her date pulls over the car. And the informant cop goes up to the car and starts talking some blah blah blah, just saying off the wall stuff so that he could get the guy out of the car. So he gets the guy out of the car and he does some officer brutality type stuff to this person. And he's doing it so he can get some information on Dr. Melfi and why she's with the guy. And so he still doesn't know what it is, and he's just assuming that she's like one of his gumars or whatever. So Dr. Milford gets out the car and lets him know that we know you can't do this. And then he says to her, this is how you know he feels like it's a romantic connection. He says to her, you have prime rib at home. You're out with hamburger, and Dr. Milford is very, very much confused. Um, she knows he ain't supposed to be treating her date like that, but she don't know why he's talking about meat. Like she don't understand. So in the next scene, Foreman Cop is telling Tony all that he knows about Dr. Melfi, how she lives a pretty boring life, and she's also going to see a psychiatrist, which shocks Tony, and it shouldn't because whoever Tony interacts with needs some type of therapy afterwards. I tell you that. So he also tells him that he was able to get some good Victoria's Secret shots of her, and Tony doesn't want to look at those pictures. Like, that's not what he sent him out there for. He questions him about their relationship again, and also something concerning um, gambling. Tony's like, yeah, that should solve your problems because ultimately, although they be having back and forth, Tony does respect him, and it seems as if he actually cares for him too. So I'm assuming that he's been an informant for Tony for a long time. So in the next scene, and Tony sits with the Capos of the family, and they're all eating lobster, and they are enjoying the fruits of the other people who works underneath them. They are discussing who could potentially be the next acting boss. The original boss is serving time in jail, and Jackie was the acting boss, but he's in the hospital right now. And Tony had really been the acting boss while he's in the hospital. And although they are making Uncle Junior feel like he should be the next person to be the acting boss, they really want Tony to be so because they were discussing how everyone else, even the people from the section in New York, will want Tony to take over the Soprano family, and all of them felt like Uncle Junior was too old school to be the boss. And so they really wanted it to be Tony. And I feel like Uncle Junior knew that too. That's why that was another reason why he was so angry at him. So in the next scene, Anthony Jr. is getting some candy from a vending machine. He walks away from the vending machine, not paying attention to where he's going, and he bumps into the young man that he had a fight with earlier in the episode. So Anthony Jr. tells him that he bet that he told his mom what was going on, and the boy was like, "No, why would I do that? That lame ass shit." So anyway, after that, Anthony Jr. tells him that he owes him money for the shirt. Now like I said, his mama told him it was his responsibility to pay for the shirt, but she didn't say nothing to him going to that young man. And the dude was like, "Bro, I did you a favor. That shirt was lame. You shouldn't even want to wear it." He didn't say that verbatim, but that's basically what he was getting at. So, but he also was like, "I don't owe you. Remember those skyrockets from the 4th of July?" And how they used them to torture frogs. So both of them were some bad little boys. But Anthony was like, yeah, okay, that was cool or whatever, but you still owe me money for the short shirt. And so dude was like, I'm not giving you no money for the shirt. Like I said, he was like, bro, I did you a favor. That shirt was lame. So they started fighting again. And when the fight was broken up, everybody who watched it said it was a tie. So they made a plan to meet elsewhere so that they could continue to fight. In the next scene, Anthony is okay. So no, not in the ex the words. So not in the next scene anything about Anthony. In the next scene, Tony is at a plant nursery and he's trying to get the cashier to get him something that's illegal. And so he sees the young man's father who Anthony Jr. had a fight with. And the young man's father knows what is going on, but Tony doesn't know what is going on. So Tony is like, hey, we should get together with the boys so they can swim and we could cook them some hot dogs. And the dad was like, he wasn't even sure that they were still friends. Um, but Tony is talking like, everything is cool. But because the young man's father feels, because he knows what Tony does, he feels like he's being sarcastic. And he abruptly ends the conversation to get away from him out of fear that Tony was trying to bait him into doing something because the sons had a fight. Now, Tony's character was definitely somebody who did horrible things, but the character wasn't written in a way to where I think that Tony would do something that would incriminate him in that way to where he want to do something to the boy's father because their sons had a fight. He was definitely treacherous, just not in that way. So in the next scene, Tony is at home and he's bringing groceries in. He goes to the refrigerator to put the apple juice up, but then he begins to have another anxiety attack. And this time he's able to control it because he's had him a bit, so he's learned some things from therapy. So Calm comes downstairs to check on him, and she asks him questions about his therapist, and maybe when it comes to like the medicine that he's taking, maybe she should up the dosage. And at this time, Calm doesn't know that his psychiatrist is a woman. She thinks it's a man because he knows that she's sensitive because he's been cheating on her. So he tells her that he's basically fine and that the doctor is doing what is needed for him. She then makes things about them, about herself. She inquires if the psychiatrist asks him questions about their marriage. And seeing as this man had just got through almost going into a full blown anxiety attack, I didn't understand why there would be something that she would be trying to question him about. And women, we definitely should stop doing it. That's not to say that Tony is not a horrible person, that she should not have like been trying to leave him. But if your man has just he's having an anxiety attack or almost could have had an anxiety attack, why would that be the thing that you go to next? Tony tells her that they do talk. All they do is talk, basically, is what he said. And he tells her that he's thinking about stopping. And she asked him if he had talked to the therapist about that. And he said that um, he hadn't. But he didn't want to keep talking about what they were talking about. So he remembers that he hadn't taken his Prozac. And he asked her if she can go upstairs to get the medication. Carmen instead says to him that she doesn't think that he should quit therapy. Um, she didn't say what I'm about to say verbatim, but she basically told him he needs to keep talking to her to help himself because she didn't understand. And she basically was telling him that if he were to stop doing therapy, that she would leave him. She didn't say it verbatim, but that's what she was getting at. As he asked her, "What do you mean?" And that's exactly what she meant. She felt like he needed therapy in order for him to change as a person. But she ultimately wanted him to go to therapy because she felt like it would lead him to religion, and then she'd be able to control him like she tries to control her children through it. But neither Carm nor Tony has real true morals. They only hold on to the morals that serve them. They were really a match made in hell. And she's upset with him about him wanting to quit therapy, so she tells him that he has to go and get his own medicine. In the next scene, Tony's in a session with Dr. Melfi, and he's talking to her about his last panic attack. She then tells him that she's going to write him a prescription for Xanax to help him deal with the panic attack. Then Tony goes on to talk about his Uncle Junior, which is the reason for the panic attack, and how he has him in a box trying to make him do something that he doesn't want to do, like ultimately having to do something to Junior. Then he starts talking about his mother, and he talks about how she doesn't appreciate the fact that he's paying for her to be in an expensive retirement home. Dr. Murphy tells him that she's testing him, and so is his uncle. She then tells Tony that she is going to refer a book to him that could help him with dealing with elderly family members. Then Melfi gives him advice on how to operate the issues that he is having. Um, she she's helping him really with being a mob boss, but she's not aware that that's what she's doing. She told him that it wouldn't hurt for him to make his mother feel like she's in charge, even if she actually isn't. And her telling him that it influenced him greatly in a decision that he would eventually make. Okay, so in the next scene, Christopher goes to one of his blocks to get money. The drug dealer on the block tells him that Uncle Junior's boys came through to get the money and told him that it wasn't Christopher's block anymore. And Christopher questioned him like, "You let them do it?" And Homeboy was like, "Yeah, like it was one of me and a bunch of them. I'm not gonna die trying to get caught up in no mob business." Um, he then goes on to juggle on his scrotum, um, to make Christopher feel good, telling him that he would when it ain't nobody else that he would rather get his money to. Bull crap. Um, but Christopher still hits him and beats him up and takes the money from out of his pocket. He then tells the guy that that's his block and that he better not allow anyone else to come and tell him that it wasn't. In the next scene, Anthony Jr. goes to the spot that he and the young man plan to have their rematch. Anthony Jr. gets there before the young man and then he finally shows up. Anthony Jr. is fully ready for them to brawl, but the young man stands there for a moment and then he finally reaches in his pocket and grabs his wallet and pulls out $40 and hands it to Anthony Jr. Anthony didn't want to take the money. He told him he'd fight him for it, but the young man said that he couldn't. Um, and I know that this decision had to come from when his father saw Tony at the plant nursery. As I didn't mention that Tony was standing there with an axe, and with him knowing what Tony does, he figured if you fight him, I'm gonna have to worry about him coming after me. So he got the money, give him the money. So, and Tony didn't even know about the fight. That's the crazy thing about it. So Anthony Jr. takes the money, and then he said, "I knew you chicken out." And the young man walks away with an energy that showed that he really wanted to fight and he really wanted to respond with what he just had, but he didn't have no other choice but to listen to his parents. So Anthony Jr.'s friend is like bigging him up, like, yeah, he chickened out. But another young man who was standing there with a look of disdain on his face was like, yeah, right, he's really scared of you. And then Anthony Jr. asks, what does that mean? And you can tell that Anthony Jr. is oblivious to the fact that the school knows who his father is, and that is his greatest protection. But he shall learn. In the next scene, Tony is in Silvio's club having a drink. He's reading the book that Dr. Melfi suggested for him to read as far as taking care of the elderly. He carefully looks around the club to make sure no one is paying attention to him, going inside his pockets to pull out his medication. He takes his pill and he sips his drink, and then suddenly on the TV, the news is relaying the message that Jackie had passed on. Tony is very emotional about this. I'm sorry, I heard something outside of my window. But Tony is very emotional about this, and him and the guys gather together to have a drink in his memory. What I really liked about this scene was when the stripper said, I'll always remember where I was on this day, because, you know, things like that happen. I can remember when Michael Jackson passed, I was at work and I said something to the same effect. Okay, right after they finish taking their drink, Christopher walks in and he asks if they heard what happened. Tony thinks that he is referring to the passing of Jackie, but Christopher says no, that's not all. He talks about him going to see the drug dealer on his block who basically told him that, and the guy's name is Yo Yo. But anyway, he basically tells him that Uncle Junior told him that it wasn't his block anymore and that they have to make restitution to him. Christopher is mad, but he is not reading the room. Tony just lost his best friend, and he's not up for making decisions about what to do with Uncle Junior. Christopher, excuse me, who is a hothead, gets upset and says to him that if he doesn't make a move, he's gonna have to question his leadership. Tony puts Christopher in his place before storming out, heading to find Uncle Junior, of course. It's not made known that that's what he's going to do. I just know because, I done watched the show a bunch of times. So he pulls up to the store, restaurant, whatever it is that I don't know what it is, that Uncle Junior is chilling at all the time with his folks. And he walks in and he lets him know that he came in heavy, but he ain't trying to use it. So Tony discusses with his Uncle Junior the next move that needs to be made since Jackie had passed. And reading the book and Dr. Melfi telling him that you should make your mother feel like she is in control. It wouldn't hurt for you to do so. And he used that same advice for Uncle Junior. So he basically tells Uncle Junior that he wants him to be the boss of the family, and Uncle Junior asks him if everybody else agrees, and he says that they do. But what everyone is really agreeing with is that Tony is the boss, and his uncle is the one who will be out front in case something happens. He does whisper this in his ear once they embrace in the hug, and he whispered it because he knew that he had to do this because it was the best decision. But also, Uncle Junior, being a mobster, whether or not he was the smartest of the other ones and whether or not he was easily influenced or not, he definitely had a plan in place to remove Tony out of the way. So in the next scene, Anthony Jr. goes to his sister Meadow's room and he talks to her about the fight that he had. And he told her how the young man he was fighting chickened out, but afterwards another student insinuated that he didn't chicken out. He just couldn't. So Meta was like, duh. And then he went on to ask him a series of questions concerning their father and his employment. She asked him how he thought that someone who worked as a garbage man could afford the home that they had. And also she asked why was it that they called Tony's friends uncles when they weren't related. Anthony didn't really understand, so she explained to him deeper that they were part of his father's other family. And then she got on a computer for them to get on the internet so that she can show how their father was connected to mob life. Melfi goes and visits the gentleman who she had a date with in the next scene, and he opens the door all scary. He is now afraid to go out of his home because of what happened with the police, and he doesn't know how it happened, so he feels like there's a mark on his back. He basically tells her that dating is not a good idea. He didn't say that verbatim, but that's basically where he was at with it. But he was definitely afraid to go out his dope room. And so she suggests to him that he should go and talk to a therapist. But he was like, "Can't you prescribe me something?" And she's like, "Man, I'm your date. I'm not your therapist. I'm not your doctor. What you think this is?" Okay. See how Tony be destroying people's lives. In the next scene, Anthony Jr. is sitting on his bed with pictures of the ties that his father has to the mob. He's printed them off the internet. They're all across his bed. And as he's laying down, he's looking at the picture of him and his father on a fishing trip. And he had the look on his face as if he didn't know who his father was. He turned off the light for him to go to sleep, still looking at that picture. I know there has to be. Nobody ever talks about how the children feel when they find out that their family is involved in mob life or that their parents may be into selling drugs or what have you. Nobody really questions, like, are they proud? Are they embarrassed? Are they afraid? You have, um, and I'm sure fear is definitely something that's felt. Um, where I grew up, a lot of young men, even from when I was a kid, didn't make it home, and they would be people that I had known, and I would be so paranoid whenever my brothers would be out. I would stay up waiting for them, praying for them to come back home because of things like that. And it wasn't necessarily something that had happened to me. It was just something that I had seen happen so much that it made me be concerned for them. So I'm pretty sure that he had all kinds of thoughts in his mind about what could happen to his father according to the life that he lived. In the next scene, Tony is in a session with Dr. Melfi, and he's talking about when he first saw his first dead body. And he said he wasn't going to tell her, he wasn't going to go into too much detail about what happened to the guy, because he knew of the relationship that they had and that she would definitely have to contact the authorities. But Dr. Melfi is staring off into space as if she isn't paying any attention to him. So Tony notices and asks her if she's okay. She then goes on to tell him that she was lost in thought and that she didn't pay attention to how her being excluded from everyday life caused her not to see the anger and violent energy of humankind. She then goes on to tell Tony about the incident that happened with her date and how he was beat up by a policeman. And Tony instantly knew who she was speaking of, informant cop. So she told him how the police officer was acting and how he was speaking of prime rib and hamburger and how she was confused by his rant. And Tony mumbled under his breath how the informant cop is an idiot. Dr. Melfi asked what he said, and he just repeated that it sounded like the guy was an idiot. She then went on to tell Tony how the incident had gotten in the way of her growing connection with her date, and Tony apologizes. She, of course, says that it's not his fault, but it is absolutely Tony's fault. Um, and then she apologized to him for bringing her problems into this session. And she asked him about the prescription that she gave him. And then she asked him if he was still having thoughts about leaving therapy. And Tony said no. And both seemed to be happy with his decision. The next scene is Jackie's funeral. And Tony and the Capos are standing to the side talking about the arrangement that Tony made with Uncle Junior and how he is now the face of the Soprano family. But Tony, in fact, was the real boss, and everyone was happy that if something happened, Uncle Junior would be the person to take the first hit. Then they started talking about Uncle Junior, and I think they might have made a joke about his mother. I can't remember, but Tony, being his hypocrite self, uh, was like, it's something to the effect of them being important and that they went to World War II. In the next scene, Tony and his capos are throwing dirt on Jackie's casket. Tony walks over and stands next to Christopher. Christopher points out the vets watching the funeral, and Tony mentions how he's happy and made a joke about them getting Uncle Junior's good side. Standing over in the distance, Anthony Jr. is watching his father. He notices how the scene looks like something out of a mob movie. The camera then pans to Meadow, who's giving Anthony Jr. the knowing look as if to say, "See, I told you." Anthony Jr. watches as his father stands as if he is the Godfather, and how the other men are speaking to him. Tony notices him looking at him and winks his eye. Anthony Jr. just looks as if he is disappointed and confused. So there's a lot going on in this episode. It's one of my favorites. It was one of the things that opened up to showing that Tony has very vivid dreams that will help him and confuse him as the seasons goes on. We saw how from the how it could affect the child finding out that their father or their family member is involved in illegal crimes. And it set up a lot. It was like a this was like a you know how they say you have filler episodes. Tony Soprano. The Soprano filler episodes. I wouldn't. They're unlike other ones because they pretty much set up the tone for what's going to happen in the rest of the season. Like it gives you a lot. Like a dream will start off with. An episode to start off with a dream that sets up things that's going to happen throughout the season. So I always felt like they didn't really have filler episodes. I'd say if there was one episode that I feel like was a filler episode, that's the episode with Master Genius. In that episode, even with this episode that we were just looking at with the character Yo-Yo, how he was acting, I like how they portrayed black people from how they look at us, and not. It seemed you could tell it was just from their perspective, and they didn't bring anybody black in there because I sometimes wonder if the aim was to make the black people look as lame as they did in the movie. Like I always wondered if there was like a joke, and not like in a racial way, but I don't know. I don't know why I like the way that they portray black people because they're obviously not. They definitely weren't. They didn't really act black American to me. Okay, so yeah, this episode had a lot in it. And the dream portion was one of my favorites, and I had a lot of lines that were said in this episode that I just blurt out every once in a while when I'm conversing. But yeah, Anthony Jr. finding out that his father was in the mob, and him not knowing if he should be disappointed or if he should be proud of it. That's something you see him fight with throughout the seasons. You see a bit more of him fighting with it in season 6, I think, but because he didn't want them in the life, they weren't influenced by it, so he was able to have like legit morals, even when it came to race, both him and Meadow. And then they both got older and started questioning things and changing how they move. So, you know, the influences of your parents. That is why I will say before I end this video, again, if your parents are toxic, there's nothing that says that you have to be in their lives. You can walk away from anybody. You can walk away from anybody who is not treating you the way that you deserve to be treated. And Tony took a lot from his mother, more than he should have. And I do these this review and the reviews that I will do to point out how some of the things that happen in the shows have a spiritual message. You know, that's one of the reasons why I'm doing the reviews. And The Sopranos have so many storylines that I can use to do that exactly. So it's one of the reasons why I chose it to be one of the first things that I did. And I hope that it helps whoever comes across it. All right, y'all. See y'all in the next one. Go ahead and check my YouTube for tarot readings and mini tarot readings throughout the week.